Welcome to the Yoga Life Project. My name is Lauran Janes, and I'm here with Rochelle Poulson. And thank you for your time and energy.
Absolutely.
I want to drop in because 5 years ago, this month, is when you were diagnosed with breast cancer.
Yes.
Can you tell me a little bit about the day you got the call?
Yeah. Well, I had told my surgeon, I said, I really don't want to have a lifetime movie moment and be sitting in your office and hear the news and, have this dramatic scene. And so can you just give me a call? And she said, are you sure? And I said, oh, that's fine, So I was at home by myself and I'm waiting for the call on the day I knew she was going to call. And I decided to go get a manicure or a pedicure and a piece of chocolate cake from what was then Cece's Market back on Congress.
Yeah.
Now it's Hop Dottie or something. Anyway, I was standing in the place getting ready to order my chocolate cake and the cell phone rang. And it was her. And so I was standing on Congress, actually, and just looking down towards the city. And she said, hey, Rochelle, it's your doctor, and I'm calling to let you know that you have breast cancer, and you have 2 different kinds. And she was real chipper about it. And she's like, but you're going to beat this. And I'm like, awesome. So I hung up the phone and then called a couple of friends and practiced telling them before I called my partner and my family. And I just kind of spent the afternoon at this shop, drinking wine and eating chocolate cake with my friends, and everyone kind of came as I found out, and it was really, it kind of set the stage for what my cancer journey was going to be like. It was this really bad news with a really great situation, a lot of really beautiful people on my path, and a lot of support and a lot of positivity. So that was that day.
So when can I go back even further than in the
Sure.
past and say, when did you know that something wasn't?
Well,
Excuse me.
I was doing yoga at Barton Springs with a friend of mine, and we'd just do it together. She was an Ashtanga teacher, and she would give me these we'd go running and then do yoga and then swim. And I was doing some dolphins, and my shoulder was like rolling in my left shoulder, and I was like, I have a headache, something's wrong. And she's like, you should go get some acupuncture. And, at the time I was preparing to get pregnant, so I was like, yeah, that'll be good for everything, for where I'm at in my life. And I did, and then there was this big shift after the treatment.
The acupuncture treatment?
Yeah, and I became really tired, and my headache got worse, and then I decided to do some, like a good massage therapist yogi would do some stretches on the ball, and I found some clear discharge that came from my nipple. And at that point, I knew that something was not right. So from that moment, we moved, more towards getting a Western medicine perspective and an exam, and it just led to a piece of chocolate cake.
Piece of chocolate cake and some girlfriends.
Right, exactly.
So I keep coming back to this word attitude, just even looking at your bright eyes and knowing that it's 5 years later and you've moved through this. Tell me the role of attitude in this journey for you.
Well, I think that is, it's interesting because when you're going through something difficult, your attitude isn't the first thing on your mind, but there are moments when you have choices, and there was a choice for me at one point where I realized that my cancer could be all about me, or it could be all about the people around me, and that it's not just my cancer journey. And I think that was the crossroads to where my attitude shifted, where I wasn't really capable, if I wanted to make it about helping others or about sharing my story, that I couldn't have a bad attitude. Otherwise my story wouldn't be well received. And it wasn't like I was trying to put on a show, but I also wanted to get through it and feel good.
Yeah.
I wanted to have the best situation I could.
I was just thinking of Clarissa Piccola and she has in her work, Women Who Run with the Wolves, she talks about how we're not made of cells, we're made of stories. And in that story, if we really can at once become clearer in the journey that is our story, then we can all start to see ourselves superimposed in everyone else's story.
Right.
And that's true healing, is recognizing like the through line
Yeah.
of the human experience, as suffering, as fear, as love, as relationship, that it's all laid out, it's all of ours to experience.
I believe that.
So let me
I do.
ask you, when so you were practicing yoga before the cancer.
Right. Just, not super seriously, just as a way
Okay.
to stay fit, or I was
Okay.
becoming fit, and I was a runner. So I was just starting to run, and I was just starting to get into shape in my life, and realized that I was 36 and not getting any younger, and, the nature's way wasn't, the natural way of looking great wasn't working anymore. So I was moving into this place, and I had these beautiful people when I moved to Austin in 2006 who were just really great examples to me, like my friend Wendy, who's a yoga practitioner, just said, come over and do yoga with me, just introduced this practice to me, which I had known all about because I was a massage therapist, and it's kind of, you're in that world a lot, but I hadn't actually picked up the practice for myself.
When did you pick it up?
I think it was that summer before I was diagnosed. I think that became a ritual for me to practice with her, and I was feeling the results. I think when you meet yoga in your life, when you get introduced to that practice, when it becomes something that you feel the benefits from immediately, it's done something for you.
And where are you now in your relationship to yoga?
Well, I just completed my second teacher training, and I've been using yoga as a part of my massage practice for the last couple of years as I've been going through these trainings, and I think it's become a spiritual path for me. It's not just about staying in shape or, it's definitely become a more spiritual path, and I've taken and I've embraced so much of the Bhakti or worship part of the yoga world. And
Will you speak about that aspect? We haven't in this Yoga Life project program, we haven't spoken much on the Bhakti aspect of yoga. I'd love to hear your experience of that.
Well, there's something about chanting and using my voice, and I grew up in the Mormon church, and we do a lot of singing. The Mormon church does a lot of singing, and that's a very strong form of worship. And I missed it for a lot of years, and so yoga brought that back into my life. And when my teacher broke out her Shruti box one day in class, and my heart just melted, and I fell in love.
What's a Shruti box?
It's like a harmonium, but it stands up straight, and you just pump it. It's very basic. It's a very slimmed down version of the harmonium. But I think my heart melted in that moment, and I was like, wow, there's this sound and there's this vibration that brings me even deeper into my body and myself. And so I think that's something that if I don't get an asana practice in, I want to chant every day. Some sort of chanting, some sort of mantra, or, and then also just learning about philosophy and the stories, that whole element of story, and being able to see myself in those stories, and to know that I'm every character in the book, right? And every character is me. And that relatable aspect of learning philosophy just helps me get from one little stepping stone of my life to the other. It's really helped me the last few years, and I appreciate the teachers that I've had that have emphasized that and allowed me to explore deeper. So
because the story it's complex, because story on one level can just run rampant, and we can believe all the stories as truth,
Right.
or we can appreciate the story as a story.
Right.
Right, and there's like totally different ways of engaging the stories we tell ourselves. And
Yes.
and I think it makes me, in this moment, humbled to recognize that, when you receive the news that you have cancer, that the mind could just run with that and create
Right.
a lot of stories that would take us into a place of disempowerment.
Oh, yes.
As opposed to
And that happens. It does.
So
Yeah.
I want to speak to that for a moment. Were there moments where that was the direction that your mind went?
I think so. I think more so as I came out of the initial year after my treatment, when everything that I could do physically was done, then all the stories started kind of playing. Other people's stories and other people's statistics and other people's outcomes of their cancer journey were more started to come to the surface and got me my monkey brain going and got me thinking, wow, what if that happens to me? Or, and there have been times where I've compared myself or how, healthy I am compared to some other yogi who had cancer, or, there's these moments, and then I realize, I look at myself, I'm like, I'm breathing, I'm feeling, I'm alive. And then all the stories just drop, and then you're in the moment, but I also tell the story of finding out, and I think to myself, did that happen to me? That's just a story. That's who I am now is not who I was 5 years ago, and not just because of cancer,
Right.
But because, we grow.
We grow. And I sometimes share the perspective that how we practice strengthens how we practice. Right? So we can practice in vanity or for vanity, or we can practice as a method of making the container of our being stronger so that we can serve more fully
Right.
with the light we've been given. Whichever one you choose, you're just going to strengthen the how.
Right.
That's one perspective. There's other perspectives. But it makes me think similarly, like when we receive the information of where our health is in that moment, that we can receive that information in a way that actually keeps us trapped there.
Yes, that makes me think of my teacher, my first teacher after yoga was Mandy Eubanks. She's so wonderful. And we always love our teachers, our first teachers.
And I do love Mandy. She's an
Yes,
amazing woman.
She is. And she had this way of, I brought my story to yoga. Oh, I had a bilateral mastectomy and my chest is tight, and I'm sure my posture was much different when I walked in there, but I brought my story to yoga because there was that element of being a victim of this thing that had just happened to me. And I wasn't bitter, but I had my story and I owned it. I owned my body was in this, feeling these things. And she just smiled and let me have my story and didn't pay very much attention to me. And that's one of the things that I, work on in my life, is not having to have so much attention. And I think that was very graceful of her, and it taught me so much. She was able to hold space for what I needed in my body, but she also showed me that I was there, not, again, the lesson came up, I wasn't just there to fix me, but I was there to show everyone how strong I was. And she needed to not baby me in order for my strength to rise up. And I kept going back to that really uncomfortable situation. And it made me feel good. Just that irritation of, wait, you're not hearing me. And she's like, yeah, but everybody else is. They're seeing how you're changing. And she was so intuitive and taught me how to be intuitive with myself and to challenge myself more and not stay stuck in that place of, this is my limitation. This is my story.
That's it. And it is those limitations, those stories, we can really bind ourselves with them and to them until literally our mobility is restricted.
Absolutely.
Literally our creativity is restricted. Like things get narrower and narrower when we over-attach.
Yeah.
And I love to hear you speak about Mandy because she is such a brilliant alignment-based teacher as well.
Yeah.
And I consider, even in the work of healing, that just learning how to put your arm bone in the socket to increase the vitality in a certain area of the body can have a tremendous impact
Right.
on how we feel, right? Just learning how to hold your bones, and then from that increased mobility or increased strength or just even increased blood flow, there's a state shift.
Absolutely.
You know, and enough of those in a row, and you start to recognize the fluidity of the state.
Well, right, and you feel it. You feel it. I mean, it's a whole new world to go from one kind of body to another. And there's a lot of emotional stuff that comes with it, but really I needed someone to pay attention to the physical alignment of my body, where if that was working, then all the emotional stuff was flowing too. It wasn't just, my body was healing physically, but because I had that, because we're not separate emotionally and physically, I don't believe, everything just started coming into alignment for me on so many levels. And I was so inspired by my own personal changes that I wanted to bring that to my practice with massage. And I started putting people in yoga poses on the table. You know, I'm like, okay, you know, side body's long, you know, press your head back. I was doing, you know, all these Anusara, you know, alignments while someone's laying on the table wanting a massage, and they're like, you're making me work really hard. And so I thought, you know, maybe I should, you know,
separate
yeah, maybe I shouldn't make my clients, and if you're watching, I'm sorry, but, you know, do so much work, but I realized how it's so related, you know, and it's so helpful.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and I want to speak for a moment to a vision and like a project that you're developing right now in real time, and I'm so excited to talk more about it. But can you share a little bit about what the vision is for the project you're working on?
Yeah, so there are a couple of friends of mine that I've met along my path the last 5 years that are cancer survivors, or I like to call us thrivers.
Cancer thrivers.
Cancer thrivers.
I like
and
it.
They're also yoga teachers, and they've gone through their teacher training as well after their treatment. And we just started realizing, talking and realizing that it can be, especially during treatment, it's a special population. And I know that I could have used a little extra something and maybe gone to a teacher that had had cancer a couple of times maybe and just learned some modifications. I mean, Mandy was wonderful, so I didn't really need that. But as the yoga community grows and it becomes very saturated, and then we're also having a lot of people surviving cancer now, which is awesome and beautiful and amazing. And treatments are becoming, easier for people, or, people are coming out of it and saying, what can I do now? And they're seeing yoga as this way. I want to have yoga teachers that are available to help increase education and awareness around learning how to do what Mandy intuitively did, is to challenge the cancer survivor that's 37 or 38 that is just getting into their practice and has so much further to go in their life, and inspiring them. And then the ones that are maybe going through treatment that just need to have a very restorative or a very careful practice, so that, they can experience their practice and a kula and a community while they're going through this. And so we're wanting to put together a co-op of teachers that are cancer survivors that work together to help each other on our own path, and then help the community also understand cancer better. And there are so many wonderful people that teach yoga for cancer, and I just kind of want to combine everybody's knowledge and just give ourselves a place to commune and create workshops and retreats and things for all kinds of cancer survivors.
I think that's brilliant, especially, again, when we talk about the human story, that the more that the story has a safe place to be heard and expressed, it's almost like in real time it can be set free.
Absolutely.
You can be at once understood because I've shared, but then also like you set yourself free from, from the loop.
Right, and you don't feel, it's important to tell our stories, but sometimes when we come to the mat, or we come to the altar, or we come to wherever we're going to do our practice, or we come to class, we don't want to have to keep telling that story over and over. We just want to experience what's happening with us. And if you can be held in a safe place, and someone who knows how to modify certain things for certain, stages
Yeah.
of your journey, then if I can help to offer that and kind of spread that out into all of the different yoga studios who want to have that kind of support, and do it in the feeling of service, and not worry about getting paid for any of that, but just really put it out there, and just I feel like it will help me to continue my journey and my experience with and keeping in touch with, because we are always on these stages of healing from our experiences, whether it's trauma or cancer, or we know one thing is different than the other.
Yeah.
And so
I'm curious too, because a few times you've mentioned like beingness and this present moment, that how has your journey, now that you're 5 years in remission, what's the language that you use?
It's kind of a cancerversary. Everyone looks at it a little differently, but
Okay.
it's
a cancerversary.
A cancerversary.
Like an anniversary,
Yeah.
gotcha.
From the time you're diagnosed, I think you're considered a survivor,
Okay.
And so survivorship, I guess, would
Okay.
be what some people call it.
So your relationship to presence, or to like dropping into this moment of this breath, like pure beingness, how has that journey perhaps invited you more fully into this moment, every moment?
I think it reminds me of how important it is to work with our fear. And so much fear is associated with a disease, and or surgery, or the unknown. And I think that if anything, helping to be in the present moment is really being honest about what I'm afraid of, and how I can, at least acknowledging that does a whole lot. It's not always that I face it fully, but it's something I acknowledge that I need to work on. And I've learned how to say, this is something that's not working for me, or this is something that's holding me back, or this is something that's teaching me something else, and I've learned how to, in order to be in the present moment, I've learned how to say, what am I afraid of? That doesn't mean I'm always afraid, but in order to, sometimes if I'm not in the present moment, it means that I'm turning away from something that might be a fear. And I love to look at that kind of stuff.
I think that's so beautifully said, because I think it can get really, we can cloud our experience as, okay, it's the them, or it's the circumstance that's keeping me out of the present moment, as opposed to, no, it's me. It's me, it's my mind, it's a game, it's a trick, a heyoka, there's some, and I just mean like the trickster in the Native American philosophy, where there's something tricking me out of this moment.
The coyote.
Yeah, and in a way, to recognize how we trick ourselves, and that fear is one of the greatest robbers of the present moment. And to be able to look at it, as opposed, like in this very moment, I can think of so many times in my life where in the moment I didn't know, but now looking back, I'm like, wow, that was all fear.
Right.
Like that was all fear. And if you can pause and be really humble, then it's you and fear. That's
my
it.
goal. Yeah, is to be able to, in that place, go, this is something. And, I've said before that this isn't the hardest thing that I'll ever do when it comes to cancer. And it wasn't. That was actually a preparatory experience for so many other things that have happened to me these last 5 years. And I look back and I just say, wow, that was hard. It was unknown, but I faced so many fears through that experience that it just prepared me to move through these other experiences. And some of them were really great experiences, some of them were hard, but it's, if I can't turn and look and see what's going on with myself, then, I feel a little lost. So I try to stay present by really looking inside and taking some ownership, and it's not easy.
Yeah.
Yoga helps me with that, to own that.
And I so appreciate that inward lookingness, because you are such a giver. You know, you are such a giver. And it's like, that's the dance. Like you look in, you deepen your understanding, and then you give back, you know, and you do that so eloquently in your work and in your service.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And tell me again, so there was a film about your journey
Yes.
that came out in...
It was in 2011, I think it was released. A local filmmaker, beautiful artist, Nevi Owens, released a film called Cancer Pants. And you can watch it if you go to cancerpants.com, or you can also rent it on iTunes. And it might be on some other major sites, but
And
definitely
it chronicles
iTunes.
your journey from your treatment journey.
It does. She met me 10 days at a fall equinox party that I was throwing as a healing kind of circle for all of my friends, and also I needed that support, so I had everyone come, and she was an acquaintance of someone, then came to the party, and was in a place in her life, as she says it, that she was looking for something to do, and she saw the energy that was happening, and she said, "Can I follow you around with a camera and just see what happens?" And so 10 days after my diagnosis, she started following me around.
Wow.
And came to all of my chemo appointments and interviewed me and my partner extensively. She was also allowed in the operating room, so there's operating room footage of both of my surgeries.
Wow.
And my radiation. It's an edumentary movie. If you have someone or know someone who's going through cancer, it's something to watch so that you can see it and go, oh, that's something that might happen, or that could happen, or that's what this looks like. Everyone's journey is different, so I hate to say that, that's what it looks like. But it's definitely, it kind of takes away the unknown, and it's been helpful to a lot of people, and I have enjoyed the feedback. So, and it's also a great Austin movie. It shows a lot of Austin places, and it's also a movie about community and how having a community and allowing people to come into your life and yes, making it not just your cancer, but everybody else gets to experience the joy of having cancer as well. People don't like it when I say that, but yeah.
That's so beautiful.
We made a party out of it. Let's put it that way.
I so appreciate this perspective, love. It's just,
Thank
it's
you.
so needed. Even, I just think about, again, going back to story, all the different stories that we can construct based on the circumstances of our life. And if we can choose, of the many storylines, if we can choose the storyline that's going to assist our vibrancy, or the storyline that's most life-affirming,
Right.
in the seat of the fire, in the seat of the fear, in the seat of the unknown, And then, do you guys have a site up right now for your next project, or is that something I can add? I can add later onto the
You can add later.
Okay.
I think that I would love to hear from any teachers that are interested in being a part of this, or who know someone who's gone through cancer. And we are working on doing a retreat this fall. That we're just
Okay.
going to start with that. So it'll be on my website, it's myname.com, RochellePoulson.com. So you can contact me that way and just let me know. But it's in its beginning stages. So,
Wonderful.
yeah.
Well, we will do our best to help in the way that we can to make
you.
sure that people know about it, and that resource, that loving nest
Yeah.
to be held
Yeah.
and to share, is known and can really be of service to people.
Thanks, Lauran. I appreciate it. It's been
Thank-
wonderful talking to you.
You too, love. Namaste.
Namaste.